At this time, I will now turn this webinar over to Mary Ann for us to begin.
Thank you so much and welcome everybody to Scam Spotting 101, How to Stop a Fraudster in Their Tracks. My name is Mary Ann Rigger. I am an associate staff attorney with the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, and I prosecute consumer fraud on behalf of the city of Chicago. I have been doing this for 7.5 years, and I would estimate that I've prosecuted over 3,000 consumer fraud cases. So 3,000 victims, 3,000 fact patterns, 3,000 bad businesses that were brought to justice. And this has given me a real firsthand look at what the common schemes are, how people are being defrauded. And so it's helped me put together this webinar on how to avoid becoming a victim of consumer fraud. Before we jump into that, I just want to give a little plug for the department. We wear a lot of hats here at BACP. We both issue business licenses and we regulate businesses. So on the kind of supporting businesses side, we have the outreach team that is responsible for putting together all of these webinars, not just to help consumers, but to help small businesses in the city. So we have webinars and business expos where businesses can learn how to avoid being cited by our investigations teams, how to file taxes, how to utilize social media to expand your business, how to use search engines to make sure that customers are able to find your business, all of these things to support small businesses and help them grow. And then kind of on the other side, we have the enforcement team, the regulation team. And this does ultimately help businesses in that it helps ensure a fair playing field for everybody. So in enforcing the municipal code, our investigators are able to make sure that one business isn't taking advantage of not following the municipal code, doing something to cut costs that another business isn't doing, to keep that playing field fair for everybody. The department regulates all different kinds of businesses, public vehicle, tobacco, liquor, retail establishments, all different kinds of businesses. So where I fit in within the department is there is a consumer fraud team. So we have a team of investigators that are assigned to investigate consumer complaints about all different kinds of businesses. They, in conducting investigations, they talk to both sides, they gather facts, they look at contracts, receipts, proof of payment, communications between the business and the consumer, and they determine whether there are violations of the city's municipal code. Once they conclude their investigation, they refer the case to me to review, make sure that we have the evidence that would be needed to proceed to court, where we seek fines, and restitution. Fines are payable to the city of Chicago. Restitution is essentially a refund that is paid on behalf of the victim. So you'll see here on the screen in 2023, January to December, we entered over $5.3 million in fines that bad businesses were ordered by judges to pay to the city of Chicago, over $150,000 in restitution ordered to be paid by respondents or defendants by these bad businesses to complainants, and there were over 450 cases that were brought to judgment by the city of Chicago, by my team and I. Unfortunately, our work here never really ends. Scammers are constantly coming up with ways to defraud people. And so what I'm hoping for in this webinar is to try to help you stay one step ahead to protect both your money and your personal information. So in regulating businesses, these are a list of businesses that have specific regulations. So these are industries that the city sought to impose kind of more technical regulations. There's specific ways that they have to operate their businesses, more specific requirements that they need to meet in order to obtain these business licenses. Often these are the types of cases where we see consumer fraud and where we are ultimately able to seek restitution on behalf of aggrieved victims. This list isn't comprehensive, so anyone that operates a business in the city of Chicago is required to have a business license. Outside of a city of Chicago business license, outside of more professional industries, the city of Chicago is prevented from regulating certain industries that are instead regulated by the state, which covers a lot of the professional industries. So doctors, lawyers, nurses, a lot of kind of medical care, accountants, things like that. The city is not allowed to regulate, but everything else requires a business license. These are the industries that have kind of very specific regulations. Every other industry, they're required to have a business license, but there aren't specific, necessarily specific regulations that apply to those businesses. So, what exactly is consumer fraud? We see this kind of legalese definition on our screen: the use of deception, false pretense, misrepresentation, concealment, or omission of any material fact with the intent that the consumer rely on the deception or misrepresentation during the course of business. Okay, great. What does all that mean? When you think of consumer fraud, essentially think of something like a bait and switch. A business lures consumers in with attractive offers, and then at the last minute switches to something else that isn't as valuable. The classic example of this bait and switch, or a classic example of consumer fraud, would be something like a motor vehicle sales place committing odometer fraud. So if this bad business has a car that's been sitting on the lot for a long time, it's not moving, and it has 150,000 miles, and they roll that odometer back to 50,000 miles. This is kind of the classic example, because they're luring a consumer in, and that the number of miles is a material fact that consumers would rely on when they're buying a car. And so misrepresenting the number of miles that a vehicle has is something that the consumer is relying on, and it's happening during the course of this sale. So that's really the kind of classic example of consumer fraud. In many cases, a consumer can be either an individual or it can also be a business. What consumer fraud is not. So not every scenario where we have a victim in a business is going to be considered consumer fraud. So consumer fraud is not mere dissatisfaction. So maybe a quality of work issue. If you hire a contractor and the tiles are crooked or something along those lines, that's not consumer fraud. A misunderstanding between a customer and business. So maybe the contract is vague. You think that you're getting a granite countertop, and the business is instead installs butcher block, and the contract just says something like countertop to be installed X amount of dollars. So a vague contract that causes a misunderstanding between the two doesn't rise to the level of consumer fraud. And then finally, breach of contract is also not consumer fraud. So if a business is late performing whatever they were contracted to do, that is also not consumer fraud. And the reason why it matters whether something is consumer fraud or is not consumer fraud is because it impacts my ability to be able to seek restitution or a refund on behalf of a victim. So the ordinance that applies to businesses for consumer fraud gives a list of the types of remedies that we are legally able to seek when someone engages in consumer fraud. And so it allows us to collect fines, and it allows us to bring an action in circuit court to get equitable relief, essentially to stop someone from taking some action or to force someone to take some action. But in terms of being able to seek a refund on behalf of a victim, in order to do that, there has to be a finding that the business engaged in consumer fraud, as opposed to a more technical violation. So if we're going to, if the city, if my department wants to seek a refund for someone, it can't be just on the basis that business didn't have a business license, or there was a mistake on the paperwork and it didn't have the business license number on it. It has to rise to that level of consumer fraud for us to be able to seek a refund on behalf of a customer. So there are some limitations on what our team is able to do that I did want to talk about. So first, we don't represent individuals. Anyone can call 311 or go to our website to file a complaint against a business. But when you do that, the city of Chicago and my department, we don't represent you as an individual. When you file a complaint, ultimately, if it leads to a court case, the case is the city of Chicago versus the bad business, and you are not a party to the case. So you don't have the ability to kind of guide the litigation like you would if you hired your own private lawyer and filed your own court case. Next, we don't mediate complaints between the customer and the business. So if we're investigating a case and the business decides they want to try to make things right with the customer, we can't engage in that kind of back and forth of, will you accept this amount? No, I don't want to accept that amount. I would rather have, this. We can't participate in that. Though we do encourage a business, if they do want to try to mitigate any violations, we encourage them to reach out directly to the customer. We can't accept any checks or any form of payment or any items on behalf of the complainant. So sometimes there's a situation where the bad business comes into court and they want to settle the case and they just want to provide a full refund. We can't take a check and then mail that to the complainant. When we seek restitution, it's done through the city and the court system that we use. So any fine and any restitution or refund amount is payable to the city of Chicago, and then the city of Chicago disperses a check to the complainant, but I can't accept any checks or any form of payment on behalf of the victim. And then finally, BACP investigators are not expert witnesses. So our team of investigators are general investigators. We saw that long list of different businesses that are regulated by our team. They know a lot about a lot of different types of industries, but in order to be an expert witness, you have to be qualified and you have to have expertise in that area. So a lot of times this comes up with motor vehicle repair shops and home repair fraud. So if you were to file a complaint about a motor vehicle repair shop and you bring it in and you pay a bunch of money and they do something to your car, you're not exactly sure what, but it doesn't, it's still not fixed when you get it back. Our investigators aren't able to look at the car and be able to determine, exactly what the shop did and why it's not working. They just don't have that expertise for various industries, because they are assigned to so many different types of cases. So the most frequent complaints that our department sees are rogue towing, and we'll talk about what that is if you've never heard of it. Home repair, motor vehicle repair, used vehicle purchases, private booting, IRS fraud, and sales of commercial goods. So we'll talk about a bunch of these, how scams happen in those areas and what you can do to prevent it. Before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about why people fall for scams, because it's kind of an interesting thing. So the first reason is that they're presenting exciting offers. A lot of times it is an offer that is too good to be true, and it is going to solve this massive problem in your life, and it kind of just falls in your lap, and you get so caught up that it's hard to kind of take a step back and to determine whether or not this person is legitimate or not. Next, they prey on politeness. It's almost shocking how smooth these scammers are. They are very good at making you feel comfortable. It's like they become a friend and they build trust with you, and it lowers your guard so that you can be taken advantage of. Next, they present themselves as an authority, saying things like they have experience. A lot of times we see this in home repair and motor vehicle repair, where there's a huge disparity between what a consumer knows, what a customer knows, versus what a contractor, what a mechanic would know. And so, we don't have this basis of knowledge that they do. And so they're kind of able to throw a bunch of technical stuff at us, terms to make it sound like we absolutely need to do what they're saying to do. I've been in the business 30 years. I've never seen whatever so bad. You need me to do this work as soon as possible. Otherwise, your whole house is going to fall down. And then finally, I think that there is this stereotype that only kind of our senior population is falling for scammers, because when we think of scammers, we think of, the telemarketers and text scams and phone scams, but that's actually the greatest amount of complaints come from those that are 20 to 29. That makes up 40% of complaints. And then ages 60 and up, even though it's only 20% of the complaints, they're losing more money on average than the younger population. Cryptocurrency is another major one that the FTC sees tons of scams in. So it's not something that BACP regulates, but something to be aware of for sure. So don't think just because you belong to one demographic versus another that you are less likely to be targeted. You don't want to kind of have your suspicions down and then be more susceptible to falling for a scam. So some general tips before we get into kind of the most common complaints that we see. There are some things that you can learn generally how to avoid being scammed before it starts. So the biggest one is going to be to do your research, and we have a bunch of resources to be able to help you look into a business and whether or not they're trustworthy. So first and foremost, getting recommendation from your own friends and family is going to help make sure that you're not hiring someone who's going to defraud you. Checking online review websites, but also be mindful of the fact that reviews can be fake. You can buy reviews, you can have reviews removed. So kind of take that with a grain of salt, and make sure that you're checking more than one of these kind of bullet points before deciding to hire a company. Don't just rely on, someone's one good review, or don't just rely on one of the review websites. So I mentioned the resources that BACP has. We have lists of general contractors, a list of active business licenses on our website. And then in addition to that, we also maintain a list of every business that was found liable for consumer fraud in the last 3 years. So if you go to that link, you'll be able to pull that up. If there's someone that you're considering hiring, you can Control F search for the business that you're thinking about hiring and seeing whether or not they were found liable for consumer fraud. And then the next thing, if a business advertises itself as a corporation, they have Inc. or LLC after their name, then you can search on the state of Illinois website to determine whether they are actually incorporated. One thing that scammers do to make themselves appear more legitimate is to add Inc. or LLC onto their name to make it appear like they're actually incorporated when they really aren't. So that's a pretty quick and easy way to determine at least whether they're actually incorporated. Next would be to make sure that anyone that you're doing business with, make sure that you get all of your receipts, your contracts, your estimates in writing, and make sure that you read through it to make sure that it matches the agreement that you and the business came to, and make sure that it is written specifically. And if you make any changes after a contract is signed, make sure that those changes are also memorialized and either added to the agreement or that there's some kind of addendum and that it is signed by both parties. We often see for home repair, a case where a business is going to be doing like $50,000, $60,000 in work. And it's just such a vague contract that says, adding bathroom renovation, and it doesn't list anything about the materials, the supplies, how much demo costs, how much labor costs. This is how much the plumbing will cost. So ideally what we would want to see, and what the city's municipal code actually requires, is a specific contract that has all of the terms clearly laid out with how much each piece costs. So demo cost, X amount of dollars, plumbing work, X amount of dollars, tile, flooring, all of it broken down. And that also helps us be able to seek restitution if something does go wrong with your deal and they complete some of the work, but not all of the work. Then that helps our investigators determine what was completed, what wasn't completed, and how much we can ask for in restitution, as opposed to, bathroom renovation, $10,000, but they completed some of the work. Our investigator again they're not qualified, they're not contractors, they're not qualified to say, okay, they did this, this, and this is how much that work is worth, and this is how much we can ask for. We can't seek restitution in that scenario because, again, they're not qualified experts. So it's important to make sure that any contract that you have is specific. Next would be to make sure that you're getting a second opinion. I learned this lesson very early on in my homeownership when I had a sewer backup and I had a company come out to rot out the sewer, and they told me that I needed to tear up my whole basement and front yard, and it was going to cost $30,000. And I was emotional and upset, and I was basically ready to sign right there. And then I took a step back, remembered my own advice, told them that we would sleep on it, got someone else out there, and they said that I only needed like $1,000 worth of work to fix an issue with my sump pump. So get a second opinion, get a third opinion. Just make sure that you're kind of verifying, what actually needs to be done. Next would be to avoid paying cash. Cash isn't traceable. If someone is telling you that you need to pay the full amount up front, that's also a little bit of a red flag. Use a credit card if possible, because credit cards have pretty great protections if you need to do a chargeback. So if possible, use that. Make sure that you keep all your paperwork, your receipts, your invoices, proof of payment. It can help if you end up needing to file your own lawsuit, or if you file a complaint with my department. All of that is very useful evidence that helps us make our case. So make sure that you keep all of your items safe. So moving on, we'll talk about some more specific businesses and types of scams that we see for those business types. So the first one is rogue towing. For the first time since I have been with the department, rogue towing took over as the most common complaint type, even over home repair. So rogue towing is when you are in an accident and you call the police, and a tow truck randomly shows up and offers to tow your vehicle, and you didn't call the tow truck. So a lot of times these companies are listening to police scanners. Sometimes they're just patrolling on the highway. But when you get into an accident, obviously you're really, most people are pretty shaken up, maybe not thinking super clearly. There's a million things going through your head. I need to contact insurance. Am I okay? Are my passengers okay? And these rogue towers show up, and sometimes they claim to be affiliated with either your insurance company, or if you have like a roadside service, AAA, they'll claim to be affiliated with them, or even with CPD or Illinois State Police. And they tow your vehicle to their lot, have you sign something that you're not really taking a second look at, because they're telling you that they're affiliated with your insurance company or the police. And what you're really signing is a tow disclosure that allows them to be able to charge you insane amounts for towing and storage. We've seen up to $8,000. So how can you make sure that you don't fall for this? First, if someone comes up to you and you didn't call for the tow, say no. They may say that they are affiliated with AAA or the police. Just say no. Make sure that you call your own tow truck, ask for what the price is going to be, and when that truck shows up, make sure that the information on the truck the business name matches who you called. Because we have seen it where someone calls for a tow truck and one of these row towers shows up. They think that they're the person, the tow truck that the person called, but really it's this third party that wasn't called. They just listen to the police scanner and show up. So make sure that you verify either on the truck or the tow disclosure that they give to you. Make sure that it's actually the business that you called. And then also never sign a towing authorization or tow disclosure that has blank spaces. So bad towing companies will either not total up the amount, and it'll charge like, street cleanup, X amount of dollars, storage, X amount of dollars, towing, this amount of dollars, and you don't really look at it to see how much it's adding up to. And then in the end, it ends up being like $5,000. A tow should not cost that much. So don't sign a tow authorization that has blank spaces or if the amount is not totaled. Next, home repair. Again, we see a lot of complaints for home repair because it is an industry where there's a big gap in the knowledge that the average customer has versus what the contractor has. And so if a contractor is telling you that, your foundation is bad and you need to add that work on and it's going to be an extra $10,000, we're a lot more likely to realize that they're not being truthful. So what are scammers doing in the home repair realm? Making unsolicited contact, especially after a fire or storm, is a big one. If someone knocks on your door and says that they were, maybe doing concrete work, adding stairs for your neighbor across the street, and they have extra materials, and therefore they can give you a good deal on some repairs that you need. That is a major red flag. So be mindful of anybody that comes knocking on your door, offering to do work, because a lot of times, someone will pay all in cash, all up front, and then they're never seen again. Next, scammers won't have a business license, won't be able to provide proof of insurance, or they provide a business license or proof of insurance for some other entity and has some strange explanation of why that is. If it seems fishy, usually it is. Requesting a full payment in advance, another hallmark of scammers. It's best when dealing with home repair and major work to kind of pay in increments, and good companies are they usually do this, more than okay with doing this, where when certain hallmarks are met, then you disperse payment. So 25%, once all of this is done, then you will make another 25% payment. Once we get to this hallmark, 75%, etc. Asking you to pay a third party, huge red flag. No reason why a legitimate business would need you to pay some random third party as opposed to their business. The next one has generic contracts or estimates. Again, I was so shocked when I first started handling these complaints of how little information was provided in a contract for a major renovation, where you can go to Office Max and get a generic contract or receipt booklet that doesn't have their business name, doesn't have their address, doesn't have any information about who they are, and that's what they put this $50,000 contract on. So kind of a red flag if they don't have kind of their own paperwork that has their business name, their business address, their license number, etc. on it. Another major red flag is if their quote is way below estimates from other companies. So we learned before that we want to get second opinions and third opinions. If one of your quotes is way, way less than the others, then you should be asking questions on why, whether quality is going to suffer. But it's a tactic that scammers use to induce you to choose them, to pay them, and then to not ever complete the work. And then lastly, if they don't give a consumer rights brochure, 3-day right of rescission, these are documents that the state of Illinois requires anytime there is a home repair contract. So if you don't receive these, major red flag, you're dealing with a business that is not aware of the regulations that exist for it, not just in the city of Chicago, but in the state of Illinois. So what happens if you end up hiring one of these fraudsters? They're not going to complete the project. Any work that they do isn't really going to be quality work, and they are not likely to have pulled required permits. Not pulling permits is a major issue because it opens a homeowner up to liability. Any work that's done on a residence has to be permitted. Otherwise, the Department of Buildings can file a case and can cite the homeowner for violations, not just for not pulling a permit, but if the work that the company does is not up to code, the homeowner has to pay to tear that work out and to have it redone. So not only are you, when you hire one of these scammers, having to pay them for work that you didn't do, then you have to pay to tear out the bad work and then pay to hire somebody new. So doing a little bit of homework at the outset can really, really save your behind when it comes to making sure that you're not going to end up in court with building code violations because someone didn't pull a permit on your behalf. How do you stop this from happening? Make sure that you're doing your homework on prospective contractors, paying in increments, and making sure that the contract is specific, that everything that you talked about with the contractor ends up in the contract. Sometimes those that are doing the kind of sales for a home repair company will promise extra things if you sign a contract with them then and there. So if they're making those kinds of promises that they're going to throw in a freebie, hold them to it and make sure that that actually ends up in the contract that you sign. So motor vehicle repair shops, this is a tricky one for BACP because we don't have motor vehicle repair experts, but when we receive this kind of complaint, we can review to make sure that the customer was given all of the information that they are entitled to. So you are entitled to get an estimate or invoice that has all of the information listed. The business name, the business address, information about your car, the odometer in and out. You also have the right to decide whether or not you would like to inspect any parts that the shop replaced. So they have to offer you the ability to do that. You don't have to if you don't, if you trust a business, you've been going to someone for a long time, you don't have to opt to see the replaced part, but they have to offer that to you. And if you do, then obviously they have to show you whatever part they took out of your vehicle. Next, you have the right to know whether or not the shop warranted the work and what that warranty is, a year, 6 months. They're not required to provide a warranty, but if they do, then they have to let you know how long the warranty lasts. And then finally, you have the right to choose what will happen if the cost to repair ends up being more than what the shop originally quoted, if it exceeds $15 or 10%. So if someone gives you an estimate to fix your vehicle, and once they open it up and look at it, they realize that it's going to cost more, that's common. That doesn't necessarily mean that the place is scamming you, but they have to ask you which you want, whether you want another estimate in writing to fix whatever issue they found, or you can approve additional repairs up to a certain amount at the outset, and then have the shop call you to let you know, hey, we found this new issue and we are going to need to do it, and it's going to be X amount of dollars. Or you can, if it's somebody that you trust, approve the repairs no matter the cost. So when you get that original estimate, you have the right to choose how you want to handle that scenario if it happens. So next we have gift card tampering. This, you'll see a couple Target gift cards. It isn't just Target. This is kind of reflective of anywhere this can happen to any business. There isn't anything specific about Target or any specific retailer that makes them more susceptible to this. It's just something that we've seen and want to make you aware of. So in this photo, you'll see two gift cards, one on the left, one on the right. On the left, you can see that the account number or the security code was scratched off. And on the right, you'll see that there's a little slip of paper in there with a barcode on it. And so what we've seen is that scammers can tamper with these gift cards, and then they still end up on the sales floor for people to purchase. So on the left, where the security code is scratched off, it's a situation where a scammer sets up bots to check whether or not gift cards have been activated. And then as soon as their program determines that something's been activated, they can use the gift card before the person who purchased it has an opportunity to use it. And then when the person who purchased it goes to use it, there's nothing left on the card because it's already been used. On the right, where we can kind of see that there is that slip of paper inserted into the barcode area, what happens there is that scammers print out a barcode that goes to their account as opposed to the one that is actually on that card. And so when the salesperson goes to scan it and the person adds money, they're adding money to that account, that scammer's account, instead of adding it onto the card that's physically attached to that gift card. So how you can prevent this by gift cards from either the website or from a card kept behind the counter. You can try to go to customer service to purchase them instead. If they're left out in the open, they're a little bit more susceptible to this kind of tampering. But if you are going to buy in person from that kind of wall of gift cards that a lot of different retailers have, just inspect them, make sure that it hasn't been tampered with, make sure that there's no random slips of paper in there. You can kind of check in there to see if it looks like it's been opened. Next, mail and parcel delivery, another area where we see a lot of scammers, a lot of activity. So what this looks like is scammers posing as UPS, FedEx, USPS. They'll contact you claiming that you missed a delivery or that you need to pay for a package to be delivered because not enough postage was paid by the person shipping it. And this can come to you through text message, email, phone call, any of those. So how can you prevent this from happening? Don't click any links in an email or a text message unless you can verify the website. So if you're on a computer and you hover over a link, then you can see the full web address of where that link goes to. And if you're on your phone, if you hold your finger, at least on iPhone, that's what I have. I'm sure Android has something similar, but if you hold your finger over the link, it'll again show the full web address of where you're going to. Because a lot of times these kinds of scam texts or scam emails might use a shortened URL, meaning they are attempting to hide where it's going to. You can't really tell. So check to see where a link is taking you before you actually click on it. Don't download any email attachments from anywhere that you don't know and trust. Don't provide any personal information through these kinds of text messages or emails. Before you respond to this kind of text message or email, make sure that you're asking yourself, am I expecting something? Did I opt in to receive these kinds of text messages or these kinds of emails? Because they do require, if they're legitimate, they require you to actually opt in. They won't just contact you randomly. So consider, if you've never provided your phone number and agreed for that entity, whether it's FedEx or UPS or USPS, to contact you, that it's not going to be legitimate if you didn't provide your consent. So I have just an example here of what it can look like. And if you look really quickly, you're not paying too close attention, then maybe you would click on this link. But there are in red, I highlighted kind of what makes this suspicious. So at the very top left, important, check your package details. Again, they're using kind of high pressure language, making you think that there's some emergency that needs to be handled right away. Right underneath that, USA Postal Service, supporting at us/trackingsupport.com. Again, this is not a USPS web address. There's a random photo in the as like a profile picture. USA Postal Service is not isn't the, I guess, name that they use, and us-trackingsupport.com, not legitimate email. Next, it says, dear customer, there's a weird space after a comma. So it's vague. There are typos. And then check this now. Again, this link would go to either a website that is meant to try to get access to your personal information. If you hover over that blue box, if you were to receive this kind of email, you would see where it would actually take you. And I can guarantee that it would not be anything related to USPS.gov. And then again, at the bottom, please note that if delivery isn't scheduled within 48 hours, you can't submit redelivery requests. Shipping and handling fees will not be refunded. So again, act within 48 hours, because otherwise you cannot submit a request, and shipping and handling won't be refunded. They're trying to make you act now, think later. Click this link, give us your information so that we can get access to payment information or whatever it is. So online marketplaces, this is going to be like your Facebook marketplace, Craigslist, a couple things to be aware of, because we, excuse me, have seen, we've seen people taken advantage of through these marketplaces. One moment. Okay. So when it comes to using these marketplaces, either as a buyer or a seller, you want to make sure that you read the policies. Some of them can provide buyer protection, seller protection. So know before you use them what they can do in case you find yourself in a sticky situation. If you're selling an item on Facebook Marketplace, there's a couple of things that you should be aware of. Anyone that responds immediately, and it's unlikely that this will be the only thing, but they should raise red flags. But a lot of times scammers have computer programs, bots that kind of crawl through Facebook Marketplace or crawl through Craigslist to look for new listings so that they can be the first because you're excited. You just want to get rid of whatever it is that you're selling. And so they have those programs set up to try to lure you in right away. Make sure that you're meeting up at a public location during the day. And if you're selling, demand cash in person. If you see any of these facts below when you are selling something on Marketplace, Craigslist, whatever it is, consider transacting with someone else. If you are requesting cash only and they ask to use Zelle, again, they might end up asking to have someone else come meet you instead or offer to pay more, because scammers, you can use Zelle to take advantage of people. And so what that looks like, what the ultimate scam is that they either want to have someone else, they'll say that they are going to send someone else so that, and they have to pay you on Zelle. And they send a fake email that claims to be from Zelle, and it will indicate that you need to set up a business account. And in order to do that, you have to pay some amount. And Zelle doesn't have business accounts. They are not going to send an email saying that you need to pay X amount of dollars to sign up for a specific account, or that you need to send money to the purchaser before being able to proceed with your transaction. So if someone asks to use Zelle when you've specified cash only, kind of a red flag there. Another one is that someone will ask, excuse me, to excuse me, use something like FedEx or UPS to take cash and get you to send whatever item, to mail an item. Couriers can't accept any cash, and that's something they're not allowed to do, but they will send you an email and it looks like it's from FedEx or UPS, indicating that you need to purchase insurance to have some item picked up, but really it's they're just trying to get access to your payment information or to your personal information. If someone's offering to pay more than the price you listed the item for, red flag. Maybe they try to lure you in by saying it's because they want to pay on Zelle or because they can't meet you in person. But anytime someone's offering to pay more than what you've listed it for, another big red flag. So this is what it looks like, the Zelle business account upgrade scam if you're selling something on something like Facebook Marketplace. essentially what it wants you to do is to send money to the purported buyer, and then they'll pay you extra when actually paying you for whatever the item is. But really, you just end up paying the scammer. Spoofing is another thing to be aware of. Scammers have the ability to make it look like your bank is calling you or the IRS is calling you. And so it'll show as a certain number calling you, but really the call originates from somewhere else. So if you'll see on the right photos, bank fraud department, did you attempt this? If you reply, then it lets that scammer know that there is a human on the other end, and essentially they have hooked you. So what happened with this one was that someone replied, then the scammer knew that there was someone else on the line. They called, were able to get access to payment information, credit card information, never provide card number, PIN number to anyone over the phone. If you are ever unsure of whether it's your bank calling you or your credit card company calling you or whether it's a scam, hang up the phone and call the number on the back of your card. Calling someone directly or calling the company directly can really save you from these kinds of spoofing scams. Another one we see come in is fraudulent order confirmations. Again, this is designed for scammers to be able to get access to either personal information or payment information. I've highlighted in red some of the kind of hallmarks of these kinds of scams. So first, you'll see that it's from help@markyourtrails.com. It's meant to look like an Amazon order confirmation. And if you just look at it really quick, it appears to be legitimate, but once you take a closer look, you realize that it is totally shady. So in the second box, you'll see approximate arrival December 19, 18, these weird typos. And then that red box where it says track your package, I showed what it looks like if you hover over that link and it would take you to mrcosmetic.com/whatever. So obviously it doesn't lead us back to Amazon. It's leading us to wherever where they're probably going to access your personal information, get you to pay for something. Please don't go to that link. It's a scammer. So sometimes, despite our best efforts, we do fall for these things. What do we do now? File a complaint with BACP if the transaction occurred in Chicago. You can file a complaint by calling 311 or using the Shy 311 mobile app, or go to the website 311.chicago.gov. If there was a business that defrauded you, but the business is outside Chicago, file with the Illinois Attorney General. For text, phone, or web-based scams, it can be very difficult to determine whether or not those originate from the city of Chicago. So the best place to turn to for those is the Federal Trade Commission. Finally, it's always best to consult with an attorney. We mentioned being able to seek restitution. Our ability to do that is kind of limited because I explained about our investigators not being qualified experts, and with private actions, there are time limits. So make sure that you consult with an attorney right away when you file your complaint. If you have a private lawsuit, that doesn't stop the city from being able to proceed with its case, and our case doesn't stop you from consulting with an attorney either. So you can do those simultaneously. Just to give an idea of what it looks like when you file a complaint, So if you go to 311.chicago.gov, you'll hit create service request. Once you click that, it brings you to this screen. Again, you'll click service request, consumer and employee protection, consumers, and then under consumer fraud complaint, you'll hit create request. And that'll bring you to our kind of intake sheet here. You'll fill out your information, attach any contracts, proof of payment, those things that I mentioned earlier that you should hold on to, because it can be evidence in a case. Send those to us, and then hit next, enter to submit your complaint. 311 routes it to our investigators. They will look at everything. They contact both sides and determine whether or not there are violations. If there are violations of the city's municipal code, they'll issue citations or tickets that get sent to me to be prosecuted. And then one thing to be aware of, if you are defrauded, be aware that there are what's called recovery scams. So if you fall for an email scam or a phone scam or a text scam, and they're able to get money or payment information out of you, and then you wise up and you realize what's going on and you cut them off, you realize that you've been scammed, you may be contacted again by a separate number, separate entity that claims that they can help you get your money back. And you want to be mindful of this. Don't give anyone your personal information. Don't pay anything to get money back. You're just going to end up losing more money. The city of Chicago is never going to make you pay anything for us to hear your complaint. Illinois Attorney General, FTC, no one is going to make you pay to be able to utilize those services. And then falling for one scam increases the likelihood you'll be contacted by others. So once a scammer knows that there is a live human being that's susceptible to scams, you may receive more of these texts, more emails, more phone calls. There are a lot of different ways that people can try to get access to personal information and payment information. So if you fall for like a bank fraud scam, you may then be targeted for something like a shipping scam. And there's one kind of subset of these types of scams that was just totally wild to me the first time I saw it. And it comes in as a text that sounds really friendly. It's something like, "Hey, Patty, this is Mary. I'm really looking forward to our barbecue." And so if you're a decent person, most people would say, "Oh, hey, I think you have the wrong number. I'm not Patty." But then they know that you are a live person and they'll say, "Oh, I'm so sorry for the inconvenience. Can I help you make money through cryptocurrency?" And it can be it's a lot more drawn out than that. They try to make conversation with you, build a rapport with you. But something as innocuous as, "Hey, I'm looking forward to dinner with you," can actually end up being a scam. So you fall for something like a banking scam, just be mindful of anything else you come in that comes in as unsolicited. If you end up paying a scammer, contact the credit card or your bank, ask them to reverse the payment. You may not be successful, but there's no harm in asking. If you provided personal information, identitytheft.gov is a government website. You can create a recovery plan. If you gave account names or passwords, then make sure that you change it. And then change anything else that may use that compromised password. If you slept through this entire presentation, these are the takeaways to remember. Pay by credit card if possible, because they're traceable. Don't use cash. Review your bank statements and credit card statements for any unrecognized charges. For any transactions between you and another person, use cash only. Don't even mess with Zelle or anything along those lines. Ignore all unsolicited calls, texts, emails, other messages. If you think that something that came in might be legitimate, you think it might be coming from your bank or whoever, either hang up and call the known number, or call the number on the back of your card. Just make sure that you're the one that kind of initiates the call so that you don't fall victim to spoofing. Offers that are too good to be true usually are too good to be true. They're meant to lure you in. Never send someone money to get money, like with our the online marketplaces or the recovery scammers. Anyone that is asking to be paid in gift cards, major red flag. They're probably going to scam you. Don't pay people in gift cards. And then beware of high pressure tactics that ask you to act quickly. Again, that's all designed to make you not think. And that's the end of this presentation. I can see that there's some chats that came in, maybe questions. Let me see. They got me with porch repair
Let's
last
see if
year.
we got some questions. It don't look like you have any, just a lot of comments.
Yeah, yeah, they got me with the porch repair. Probably, I would imagine that it's something like, hey, we were working across the street. Do you want us to work on your porch? That's a really common one. Don't provide verification code to anyone who asks, including the bank. That's a great tip. So if you, now that there's kind of the two-stage authentication, don't provide that code to anyone on the phone.
It looked like one question came in. Can you please provide an example of how a restaurant might commit fraud to its consumers?
Sure. What we see most commonly with restaurants is service fees not being disclosed. So tacking on either credit card charges or charges for if there's a party of a certain size, just different service charges that are not being disclosed. If that happens, that is something that a consumer can file a complaint. Any additional charges that are being charged to you by a restaurant or any other kind of business, a business has the right to decide what their fees are going to be, and what's kind of charges they're going to do, like a credit card charge or, charging a certain percent because someone's using a credit card, or charging, an extra X amount to cover healthcare for restaurant employees. That's something that we see commonly, and it's completely allowed under the ordinance. However, all of these extra charges have to be disclosed to consumers upfront. Got me with the extra charge for package delivery, said they needed an extra 49 cents. Yeah, these are really common ones. Just be mindful. Anyone contacting you unsolicited, you can call the post office and see if there's a package being held. Go in person to the post office, call your local branch. The name of the ordinance, I imagine that's about restaurants. What's the name of the ordinance and where do they have to disclose it? So for any service charges, either on the menu, it can be posted either on a menu that you get at the restaurant, on if they have like a board with all of the prices, they can disclose it there. The consumer fraud ordinance is to 25090A, and it covers a lot of different businesses.
You see the other one? If the fees are not disclosed, do we have to pay it?
So that's tricky. I would encourage you to pay it and then file a consumer fraud complaint. With the restaurant charges, a lot of times you can ask that they be removed, and a lot of restaurants that we've seen do indicate that they can be removed upon request. So I recommend doing that, but if you end up paying a fee that wasn't disclosed to you ahead of time, you can file a complaint, call 311. That's something that we can seek restitution for. A BACP, our main remedy is being able to seek restitution and refunds and fines against businesses, as opposed to forcing someone to do something, forcing someone to not take an action. A business always has to be in compliance. So if they're not putting a fee, if they're not disclosing a fee, that's something that they have to remedy. But our ability to seek a remedy for the victim is limited to kind of the money part of it, money judgment.
Looks like we don't have any more questions. Thank you for your presentation today. You will receive credit for this webinar if you are a part of the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program. To learn more about our upcoming webinars, please visit chicago.gov/business education. Again, that's chicago.gov/business education. Any last thoughts for our attendees before we sign off?
No, thank you everyone for joining. I hope that you learned something, and stay safe out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.